Welcome to the Senate Minute, a podcast dedicated to keeping the public informed about the Indiana General Assembly and engaged in the legislative process. Today's guest is Senator Luke Kenley to talk about road funding bills. Thank you for joining me, Senator Kenley. First, tell me about the Senate road funding plan.
Well, a big issue this year is that we think we need to make sure that we improve our roads and highways and local streets and roads throughout the state of Indiana. And although Indiana has put a lot of money into roads in recent years, over $1 billion a year the last 7 years, we still feel like we need to have a formula that will not only upgrade and fix the roads that need to be fixed, but provide a method of funding those going forward for the long term.
Switching over to the House bill, what were the amendments made to House Bill 1001?
Well, the House sent over a bill that dealt basically with two issues. One was providing local funding for local roads and streets, and what they did was they increased the wheel tax alternative and gave locals more authority to implement more taxes. We found that part of the plan to be acceptable, and we thought that would help quite a bit. On the state roads, the House was trying to come up with some tax increases that might fund up the plan going forward, and the tax increases they chose were a gas tax indexing factor, which raised it 4 cents, and then they also raised a cigarette tax. And the problem with those proposals was that both of those taxes, because we're now getting better mileage on our cars, are what you call diminishing taxes. In other words, people are using less of it, so you just keep getting less receipts. And the cigarette tax, of course, is designed to be raised to discourage people from smoking. So the hope is you collect less tax, but the reality sometimes doesn't mesh. And so we thought that although their local plan was pretty good, that we weren't quite ready to go forward on the state plan. The reality is we do need to solve that problem.
Okay. So how are Senate Bill 67 and House Bill 1001 different?
Well, Senate Bill 67 is a bill by Senator Hirschman and I, which purely deals with the local option income tax funds that they have. And so we have figured out that we don't need to retain those at the state level so much. So we're going to send back to all the local units of government $430 million, kind of in a one-shot deal. And we're asking that they use 75% of that money on roads. The House Bill 1001 is supposed to deal with not only giving locals authority with respect to funding roads, but how we're going to solve the overall state plan going forward. And so we amended the House bill. We did not pass the tax increases that they had in there. Instead, we called for what we call a task force of the governor's people and our people to get a plan put together for the next year's budget to say, here's how much extra projects we want to do, here's how we're going to fund the projects and the maintenance, and here's how we're going to raise money to do all that.
And why do you think these bills are so important for the state of Indiana?
Well, Indiana has two reasons why we need to have good roads. We're known as the crossroads of America, and so we need to have good roads to satisfy our citizens and give them a sense of having safe, convenient, and usable roads. But the second reason is economic development. Indiana has more per capita manufacturing than any state in the union. We are located within 24 hours driving time of half the population of the United States. So we need to have really good roads coming in and out of Indiana for our commerce sector and to attract more businesses to locate their manufacturing plants in Indiana or their warehousing plants. And so road infrastructure is a big issue here.
Last question for you. What are the next steps for these bills?
Well, we're in conference committee discussions with the House and also with the governor's office, because this is the number one issue of the session this year as to how we're going to try and deal and solve this problem. And so what we need to do is reach an agreement with the House going forward on a plan, and one that the governor is comfortable with and that he will approve of. So we hope to have that done by next week this time.
Thank you for sitting down with me today, Senator Kenley, and thank you to our listeners for joining the Senate Minute. To subscribe to this podcast, visit IndianaSenateRepublicans.com.